My name is Meredith, and I am 32 years old. Right now, I am standing in a white wedding dress looking out the church doors at three people I never expected to see again. My parents and my younger sister Kristen are standing on the stone steps, their faces frozen in shock. 13 years ago, those same people told me something I will never forget. They said, "Do not come home. Your sister does not want you there." So, why are they here now on the happiest day of my life? Before I take you back to where it all started, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you believe that family should always come first, hit that subscribe button because this story might just change your mind. Now, let me tell you everything from the beginning. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, in a two-story wooden house with a big backyard where I used to catch fireflies on summer nights. The house had creaky stairs and a kitchen that always smelled like whatever my mother was cooking. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family, but perfection, as I would learn, is often just a mask. My father, Harold, was a plumber. He worked long hours, came home tired, and rarely said much at dinner. He was not a bad man, just a quiet one. The kind of man who let his wife make all the decisions, because it was easier than arguing. My mother, Darlene, was the opposite. She was a homemaker who ran the household like a general running an army. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. When she spoke, everyone listened. When she made a decision, it was final. Then there was my sister Kristen, 4 years younger than me. From the day she was born, Kristen demanded attention. She cried more than most babies, got sick more often, and always seemed to need something. My mother dedicated herself to Kristen completely, and I understood. I really did. Kristen was fragile. Kristen needed more care. That is what I told myself every time my mother rushed past me to tend to my sister. I was different. I learned to read before kindergarten. I made my own breakfast by age 7. I did my homework without being asked and never complained when my parents missed my school events. I thought being independent was a virtue. I thought it would make my parents proud. Instead, it made me invisible. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I was 13 years old. I had just won first place in a statewide writing competition. My essay about resilience had beaten out thousands of other entries, and I came home clutching the gold certificate like it was made of actual gold. I ran into the kitchen where my mother was preparing dinner and held it up for her to see. She glanced at it, nodded, and said, "That is nice, Meredith." Then she turned back to the stove and started talking about how Kristen had been teased at school that day and how she needed to call the teacher tomorrow. I stood there holding my certificate, waiting for something more. A hug, a smile, anything. But my mother had already moved on. I told myself it was fine. Kristen was having a hard time. My achievement could wait. I was the big sister. I was supposed to understand. When I made the varsity volleyball team in ninth grade, my parents did not come to a single game. Kristen did not like sitting on bleachers for too long, they explained. It made her restless. So I played every game looking up at the stands, searching for faces that were never there. My teammates had parents who cheered and held up signs. I had empty seats and excuses. But here's the thing that makes this complicated. Despite everything, I loved Kristen. I truly did. When she struggled with math, I sat with her for hours explaining fractions and decimals. When she got bullied by some girls in middle school, I walked her to class every day for a month until they backed off. When she had nightmares, she would climb into my bed and I would stroke her hair until she fell asleep. And Kristen loved me too, or at least I thought she did. She used to follow me everywhere, copying the way I walked and talked. She would tell anyone who listened that her big sister Meredith was the best person in the whole world. Those words meant everything to me. They were proof that even if my parents did not see my value, my sister did. I built my identity around being a good sister. I believed that family bonds were unbreakable, that blood ties meant loyalty and love no matter what. I carried that belief like a shield, protecting myself from the small hurts that accumulated over the years, the missed birthdays, the forgotten achievements, the way my mother's eyes always seemed to look past me to find Kristen. I did not know then that shields can shatter. I did not know that the people you trust most can become the ones who hurt you deepest. I did not know that my little sister, the one I had protected and loved unconditionally, was already planting seeds of destruction that would eventually tear our family apart. But I would learn. The hard way. The summer I turned 18, everything I believed about my family began to crumble. I had just received a letter that would change my life. A full scholarship to a university in Pennsylvania, more than 500 miles from home. It was one of the best communications programs in the country, and they wanted me. Full tuition room and board, everything covered. I had worked so hard for this, studying late into the night, volunteering, building the perfect application. And it had paid off. I remember running home with that letter clutched in my hands, my heart pounding with excitement. I burst through the front door, calling for my parents. They were in the living room, my mother watching television while my father read the newspaper. I stood in front of them, barely able to contain my joy, and announced that I had gotten a full scholarship to Pennsylvania. My mother's reaction was not what I expected. Her face did not light up. She did not jump up to hug me. Instead, she frowned slightly and asked a question that felt like a punch to my stomach. She said, "Pennsylvania. That is so far away. Who is going to help me with Kristen? If you leave," I stood there speechless. I had just received the opportunity of a lifetime, and my mother's first thought was about how my absence would affect her convenience. My father barely looked up from his newspaper. He just said, "Good for you," and turned the page. I tried to brush it off. I told myself they were just surprised that they needed time to process the news. They would come around. They would be proud of me eventually. But things only got worse. From the moment I announced my scholarship, Kristen changed. The sister who used to follow me around like a shadow suddenly wanted nothing to do with me. She stopped coming to my room to talk. She stopped asking me for help with her homework. When I tried to have a conversation with her, she gave me one-word answers and found excuses to leave. I asked her one evening what was wrong. We were in the kitchen, and I had made her favorite snack, hoping to bridge whatever gap had formed between us. She took one look at the plate, then looked at me with eyes I did not recognize. Cold, distant. She said nothing was wrong and walked away. I blamed myself. I thought she was sad about me leaving, that she was pushing me away to make the goodbye easier. I understood that kind of defense mechanism. I had used it myself, so I gave her space, thinking she would come around before I left. The night before my departure, I packed my bags in my room, folding clothes and organizing books while trying to ignore the heavy feeling in my chest. When I finished, I walked down the hall to Kristen's room. I had something for her, a bracelet we had bought together at a county fair the year before. It had two interlocking hearts, and we had each kept one half. I wanted to give her my half, to let her know that even though I was leaving, she would always have a piece of me with her. I knocked on her door. She opened it just a crack, her face expressionless. I held out the bracelet and told her I wanted her to have it. I said I would miss her, and that no matter how far away I was, she would always be my little sister. She looked at the bracelet in my hand, then she looked at me, and she said something that stopped my heart. She said, "Just go, Meredith. Stop pretending you care. You only want to run away from this family. You have always thought you were better than us." I could not breathe. I tried to explain that it was not true, that I loved our family, that the scholarship was an opportunity I could not pass up. But she did not want to hear it. She closed the door in my face, and I heard the lock click. I stood in that hallway for a long time, holding the bracelet, trying to understand what had just happened. Where had this come from? What had I done to make her believe I did not care about her? The next morning, I came downstairs with my suitcase, hoping for some kind of farewell. My parents were at the kitchen table eating breakfast, as if it were any other day. My mother glanced up and asked if I could get myself to the bus station. She had to take Kristen to a doctor's appointment that morning. I nodded. What else could I do? I wheeled my suitcase out the front door alone. No hugs, no good luck wishes, no tears. I turned back once, looking up at the house I had lived in for 18 years. In the second-floor window, I saw a shadow behind the curtain. Kristen. She was watching me leave. But she did not wave. She did not open the window to call out goodbye. She just stood there still as a statue until I turned and walked away. The bus ride to Pennsylvania took almost 10 hours. I sat by the window watching the Ohio farmland give way to Pennsylvania mountains, and somewhere along the way I started to cry. Quiet tears that rolled down my cheeks while other passengers slept or read their books. I did not make a sound. I had learned long ago how to cry without being heard. I did not know then that this was just the beginning. The worst was still to come. My first year of college was a study in contradictions. On one hand, I was thriving academically. My professors praised my writing. I made the dean's list both semesters. I joined the campus newspaper and had my articles published weekly. For the first time in my life, people saw me. They recognized my efforts. They told me I was talented. On the other hand, my connection to home was slowly dying. I called home every Sunday without fail. I would sit on my dorm room bed, dial the familiar number, and wait. My mother usually answered. The conversations were always short. "How are you, Meredith?" "I am fine, Mom. How is everyone there?" "We are fine. Busy. Kristen has her dance recital coming up. I should go help her practice." The calls rarely lasted more than 5 minutes. My father came to the phone, occasionally asking generic questions about the weather or my classes before handing the phone back to my mother. Kristen never took my calls. My mother always had an excuse. Kristen is studying. Kristen is with friends. Kristen is not feeling well. I sent letters home with photographs of my dorm room, my new friends, the beautiful campus in autumn. I never received a reply. When Thanksgiving approached, I bought a bus ticket home without telling anyone. I wanted to surprise them. I imagined walking through the door to the smell of turkey and stuffing my mother's face, lighting up when she saw me, my father clapping me on the shoulder, Kristen running to hug me like she used to when we were kids. I called my mother a few days before to casually ask about their Thanksgiving plans. She sounded distracted, and she said they were keeping it small this year, nothing fancy. Then she asked if I really needed to come home since the trip was so long. I said I was coming anyway. I wanted to see them. There was a pause on the line. Then she said, "All right if you want to." If I want to. As if my desire to spend a holiday with my family was an inconvenience. I arrived home on Thanksgiving afternoon after another 10-hour bus ride. I was exhausted but excited. I walked up the driveway, rolling my small suitcase behind me, and opened the front door. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No sounds of cooking, no football on the television, no voices. I found my mother in the kitchen putting away leftovers. Leftovers. I looked at the clock. It was barely 4 in the afternoon. I asked what was going on, and she explained that they had eaten Thanksgiving dinner early because Kristen had plans with friends that evening. She said they did not know exactly when I would arrive, so they did not wait. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching my mother wrap aluminum foil over dishes of food that I had not been there to share. On the counter was the turkey carcass, already half picked clean. The mashed potatoes were cold. The gravy had congealed. My mother gestured toward the refrigerator and said I could heat some up if I was hungry. I ate Thanksgiving dinner alone that year, sitting at the kitchen table while my mother went upstairs to help Kristen get ready for her evening out. The food tasted like cardboard. Or maybe that was just the taste of disappointment. During that visit, I noticed other things. Small things that added up to something bigger. The family photos on the living room wall had been rearranged. New pictures had been added. Kristen at her dance recital. Kristen at her birthday party. Kristen with friends at the lake. But the photos of me were gone. My senior portrait, the picture of me accepting my writing award, the family photo from our last vacation together. All of them removed. I went up to my old bedroom and found it transformed. My bed was gone, replaced by yoga mats and exercise equipment. My posters had been taken down. My books had been packed into cardboard boxes and shoved into a corner. The room smelled like lavender essential oils and Kristen's perfume. When I asked my mother about it, she shrugged and said Kristen needed the space for her yoga practice since I was not using the room anymore. She said my things were in the garage if I needed them. My things? In the garage, like old furniture being put into storage. But the worst discovery came when I overheard a conversation I was not meant to hear. I was walking past my parents' bedroom door when I heard Kristen's voice. She was talking to my mother, and my name made me stop. She said I do not know why Meredith even came home. She does not care about us. Do you know she told her college friends that she is embarrassed by our family, that she thinks we are not good enough for her? My blood ran cold. I had never said anything like that. Not to anyone. It was a complete lie. My mother's response crushed me. She said, "I know, sweetheart. Your sister has always had a selfish streak, but do not worry, we have each other." I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. Kristen was telling lies about me, and my parents believed her without question. Without ever asking me for my side of the story, I left the next morning, cutting my visit short. No one asked me to stay. The following summer, after my sophomore year, I called home to ask if I could stay for the break. I had nowhere else to go, my dorm was closing, and I could not afford summer housing on my own. There was a long silence on the phone. Then my mother spoke, and her words carved themselves into my memory forever. She said, "Meredith, do not come home. Kristen does not want you here. She is going through a difficult time, and your presence only makes things worse for her. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I said, Mom, I am your daughter too. She replied, Kristen is also my daughter, and right now she needs me more than you do. You are an adult, Meredith. You can take care of yourself. Then my father's voice came on the line. He said, Do not come home. Your sister does not want you there. Respect that. The line went dead. I stood in my empty dorm room, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. Outside the window, other students were laughing, celebrating the end of the semester, making plans with their families for the summer. I had never felt more alone in my entire life. I did not cry then. I was beyond tears. I just felt hollow, like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that made me human. That was the moment I realized the truth. I had not lost my family. I had never really had them in the first place. The weeks after that phone call were the darkest of my life. I found emergency summer housing in a cramped apartment with two strangers working double shifts at a campus coffee shop just to pay the rent. Every night I came home exhausted, collapsed on my mattress, and stared at the ceiling, asking myself the same questions over and over. What did I do wrong? Why did they choose her? Am I really as selfish as they think I am? The doubt was poison seeping into everything I did. My grades that fall suffered for the first time ever. I stopped going to newspaper meetings. I withdrew from friends, making excuses to avoid social gatherings. Food lost its taste. Sleep became a battle I fought and lost every night. One evening, I was lying in my dorm room bed, not sleeping, not reading, just existing when my roommate came in. Her name was Jasmine, a bright-eyed girl from Atlanta, with natural curls and a smile that could light up a room. We had been assigned as roommates that semester, but I had kept my distance from her from everyone. Jasmine sat on the edge of my bed without asking permission. She looked at me for a long moment, really looked, and then she said, Okay, Meredith, what is going on? And do not tell me nothing, because I have eyes and I am not stupid. I do not know what made me open up to her. Maybe it was how tired I was. Maybe it was the genuine concern in her voice. Maybe I just needed someone, anyone, to hear my story. Whatever the reason, I started talking, and once I started, I could not stop. I told her everything, my childhood, the favoritism, the slow realization that I was invisible to my own parents, Kristen's lies, the phone call that cut me off from my family forever. I talked until my voice was hoarse, and when I finished, I waited for her to tell me I was being dramatic, or that I should try to make up with my family. She did not say any of that. Instead, she took my hands in hers and said something I will never forget. She said, Honey, you have been trying to earn love that should have been given freely. That is not on you. That is on them. Those words cracked something open inside me. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that I was not the problem, that my family's rejection was not a reflection of my worth, that I deserved better. Jasmine became my lifeline that year. She dragged me to the campus counseling center, sitting in the waiting room with me until my name was called. She made me eat when I forgot, made me sleep when I could not. She introduced me to her friend group, a ragtag collection of students from all backgrounds, who welcomed me without hesitation. The counselor, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson, helped me put words to what I had experienced. She talked about toxic family dynamics, about scapegoating, and golden children, about how some families unconsciously assign roles that have nothing to do with the actual people filling them. She helped me understand that I had been cast as the independent one, the one who did not need anything, and that role had allowed my parents to justify their neglect. It was not my fault. It had never been my fault. That realization did not heal me overnight. Healing is not like that. It is slow and painful and full of setbacks. But knowing the truth gave me something I had been missing. It gave me permission to stop trying. I stopped calling home. I stopped sending letters and cards. I stopped reaching out to Kristen. I stopped waiting for them to see me, to choose me, to love me the way I deserved to be loved. I let go. And in letting go, I found space to breathe. Jasmine invited me to spend Thanksgiving with her family in Atlanta. I almost said no out of habit, out of the instinct to not be a burden. But she insisted, and I went. Her grandmother's house was chaos, in the best possible way. Aunts and uncles and cousins, everywhere, children running through rooms, 3 different football games, playing on 3 different televisions. The kitchen smelled like collard greens and sweet potato pie, and everyone talked over each other in a symphony of Southern accents. Jasmine's grandmother, a tiny woman with silver hair and hands that never stopped moving, pulled me into a hug the moment I walked through the door. She said, "Any friend of my grandbaby is family." You call me Grandma Jean, you hear I hugged her back, and something inside me broke and healed at the same time. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not obligation and resentment, but warmth and welcome. I graduated college 3 years later at the top of my class. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up, and I was proud of who I had become. I was not the broken girl my family had discarded. I was someone new, someone stronger, and I was just getting started. After graduation, I landed a job at a marketing firm in Philadelphia. It was entry level, the kind of position where you make copies and fetch coffee and hope someone notices your actual work. But I threw myself into it with everything I had. I stayed late. I volunteered for projects no one else wanted. I brought ideas to meetings even when I was the most junior person in the room. People noticed. Within 3 years, I was promoted twice. By the time I was 26, I was the youngest account manager in my department. I had my own office with a window that looked out over the city skyline. I bought a small apartment in a renovated building downtown and spent my weekends painting the walls and hanging pictures and turning it into a home that was entirely mine. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Not because anyone had given me permission to belong, but because I had built a place for myself with my own two hands. I still talked to Jasmine regularly. She had moved to New York after graduation and was working as a social worker, helping kids from troubled homes. We visited each other whenever we could, and she remained my closest friend, the sister I had chosen instead of the one I had been given. I did not think about my biological family much anymore. They had become like characters from a book I had read long ago. I knew their story, but it no longer felt like mine. Then I met Nathan. It happened at a charity gala my company was sponsoring. I was there to network schmoozing clients and handing out business cards in a dress I had bought specifically for the occasion. I was standing by the bar taking a break from small talk when a man walked up beside me and ordered a club soda. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with brown hair that looked like he had run his hands through it a few too many times, and warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was wearing a nice suit but no tie, and something about him seemed different from the other men at the gala. Less polished, more real. He glanced over at me and said, "You look like you would rather be anywhere else right now." I laughed despite myself and said he was not wrong. We started talking. His name was Nathan, and he was an architect who had designed the building where the gala was being held. He asked about my work, and unlike most people at these events, he actually listened to my answers. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details. We talked for 2 hours. When the gala ended, he asked for my number. I gave it to him. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and candles on every table. He told me about growing up in Vermont, about his parents who had been married for 30 years and still held hands in public, about his dream of designing buildings that would outlast him. He was genuine and kind and unafraid to be vulnerable. On our fifth date, he took me to meet his family. I was terrified. The last time I had been part of a family gathering, I had eaten Thanksgiving dinner alone in a cold kitchen. But Nathan's family was nothing like mine. His mother, Eleanor, hugged me the moment I walked through the door. His father showed me his woodworking shop in the garage. His younger brother challenged me to a video game tournament and then pretended to let me win. At dinner, Eleanor raised her glass and said she was so happy Nathan had found someone like me. She said I was welcome in their home any time that I was part of the family now. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried. Happy tears, but tears nonetheless. A few months later, Nathan and I were lying on the couch in my apartment watching a movie neither of us was paying attention to. I decided it was time to tell him about my past, about my parents and Kristen, and the phone call that had severed me from them. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he pulled me close and said something I will never forget. He said, "You are not defined by the people who failed to love you. You are defined by the love you choose to give and receive." I cried in his arms that night, but for once the tears felt like release instead of grief. 2 years later, on a hill overlooking Philadelphia at sunset, Nathan got down on one knee. The city sparkled below us like a sea of stars, and his hands were shaking as he opened the ring box. He said, "Meredith, you are the strongest person I have ever known. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the question. We began planning the wedding immediately, a small ceremony at a historic chapel outside the city. Autumn when the leaves would be golden and red. Only close friends and family. Nathan asked me one evening if I wanted to invite my parents and Kristen. He did not pressure me either way, he just asked. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to leave them in the past where they belonged, but another part of me, a part I did not fully understand, wanted closure. I wanted them to see what I had become without them. I wanted to prove, if only to myself, that I was strong enough to face them. I sent 3 invitations to my childhood home in Ohio. No personal note, just the formal invitation with the date and location. I did not expect them to come, but I needed to know that I had opened the door even if they chose not to walk through it. The morning of my wedding arrived wrapped in golden autumn light. The chapel was a small stone building surrounded by maple trees whose leaves had turned every shade of red and orange. Through the stained glass windows, the sun cast rainbow patterns across the wooden pews. I stood in the bridal suite, a small room off the main sanctuary, looking at myself in the mirror. My dress was simple but elegant. Long sleeves, a modest train, delicate lace at the collar. I had chosen it alone, tried it on, alone bought it alone. I did not have a mother to cry and take pictures, but that was okay. I had built a life that did not require their approval. Jasmine was there, of course, serving as my maid of honor. She fussed over my hair and dabbed at her eyes and told me I was the most beautiful bride she had ever seen. 2 other friends from college were bridesmaids, women who had walked beside me through the rebuilding years. Nathan's mother, Eleanor, had also been helping all morning, adjusting flowers and coordinating with the caterer. At one point, she took my hands in hers and said, "I know I can never replace your mother, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. You are already a daughter to me." I hugged her tight and blinked back tears. I could not afford to ruin my makeup before the ceremony. Everything was perfect. The flowers were in place. The music was queued up. The guests were being seated. In 30 minutes, I would walk down the aisle to marry the love of my life. Then Jasmine came into the bridal suite with an expression I could not read. She said, "Meredith, there are some people outside, at the front of the chapel." I knew immediately who she meant. I walked to the window and looked down at the stone steps of the chapel. There they were. My father, Harold, looking older and grayer than I remembered. My mother, Darlene, in a blue dress that did not quite fit right. And behind them, half hidden, my sister, Kristen. 13 years. 13 years since they had told me not to come home. 13 years of silence, of birthdays forgotten, of a family that had erased me like a mistake. And now here they were standing on the steps of my wedding chapel, as if they had any right to be there. Jasmine asked if I wanted her to send them away. She would do it, no questions asked. I considered it. The petty part of me wanted to watch them be turned away, wanted them to feel even a fraction of the rejection I had experienced. But that was not who I was anymore. I had not spent years healing just to become bitter. I told Jasmine I would talk to them, but on my terms. I walked out of the bridal suite through the side door of the chapel and around to the front steps where my family stood waiting. They did not see me coming until I was already there, my white dress trailing on the stone path, my head held high. My mother saw me first. Her face cycled through several emotions: shock, guilt, something that might have been pride or might have been jealousy. It was hard to tell. She stepped forward and said my name. Then she said we needed to talk, that there were things she wanted to explain. I did not move closer. I stayed where I was, keeping a safe distance between us. My father stood behind her, his eyes fixed on the ground. He looked diminished somehow, like life had worn him down. Kristen lingered at the back, her posture defensive, her face unreadable. My mother began speaking rapidly, words tumbling out like she had rehearsed them on the drive over. She said she knew they had made mistakes. She said things had come to light in recent years. She said Kristen had not been entirely truthful. I listened without expression as she explained. Apparently, a few years ago, Kristen's lies had begun to unravel. She had told similar stories to other people in her life, friends and coworkers, and 2 ex-husbands, and eventually the contradictions became too obvious to ignore. People started comparing notes. The truth emerged. Kristen had been jealous of me since childhood. She had resented my academic success, my independence, the way teachers praised me. When I left for college, she saw an opportunity. She started telling my parents that I complained about them to my friends, that I thought I was too good for our small town family, that I wanted nothing to do with them. My parents, already inclined to favor the daughter who needed them more, believed every word. They did not question it. They did not call me to verify. They simply accepted Kristen's version of events and pushed me away. Now, standing before me, my mother asked for forgiveness. She said they did not know. She said Kristen had manipulated them. She said they were sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I looked at my father, who still would not meet my eyes. Then I looked at Kristen, who was trying very hard to appear remorseful. And I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not even sadness. Just a profound exhaustion with all of it. I spoke calmly. I said I needed you when I was 19 years old. I needed you when I was 20, when I sat alone in my dorm room wondering what I had done wrong. I needed you when I cried myself to sleep for months, when I questioned my own worth, when I believed that I was unlovable because my own family had thrown me away. My mother started to say something, but I held up my hand. I continued. I said I needed you to believe me. I needed you to fight for me. I needed you to choose me just once. But you did not. You chose the easier path. You chose the child who demanded your attention instead of the one who loved you quietly. I turned to Kristen. She flinched when our eyes met. I said, "And you? I do not hate you. That might surprise you, but I do not. I feel sorry for you. You spent so many years tearing me down, manipulating everyone around you, and look where it got you. I hope you find peace someday. I hope you figure out why you needed to destroy me to feel better about yourself. But that is your journey. It is not mine anymore." I let those words hang in the air. My mother was crying now. My father had finally looked up, his face stricken with something that might have been regret. Kristen said nothing. I took a breath and delivered my final verdict. I said, "You can stay for the ceremony if you want. You were invited, and I am not going to uninvite you. But understand this clearly. You are guests here, not family. My family is inside that chapel. They are people who chose to love me when you would not." I turned and walked back into the chapel without waiting for a response. Inside, Jasmine was waiting. She asked if I was okay. I smiled a real smile and said I was better than okay. I was free. 15 minutes later, I stood at the back of the chapel, ready to walk down the aisle. Nathan's father had offered to escort me when he learned my situation, and I had accepted gratefully. He stood beside me now, his arms steady and warm. The doors opened. The music began, and I walked toward my future. Nathan was waiting at the altar, his eyes shining with tears. He had never looked more handsome or more kind. Behind me in the very last pew, I knew my parents and Kristen were sitting. I did not turn to look at them. I did not need to. The ceremony was everything I had dreamed of. When the officiant asked if I took Nathan to be my husband, my voice did not waver. When he declared us married and Nathan pulled me into a kiss, the chapel erupted in cheers and applause. I was married. I was happy. And I had won not through revenge, but through the simple act of living my best life, despite everything they had done to break me. My parents left immediately after the ceremony. They did not stay for the reception, did not try to speak to me again, did not meet my new husband or his family. They simply slipped out the back door and drove away. I did not notice their departure until hours later, and by then, I did not care. Kristen sent me a text message the next day. 2 words. "I am sorry." I read it once. Then I deleted it without responding. Her apology meant nothing to me. It was too little too late, and it was probably more about making herself feel better than actually acknowledging the damage she had caused. I did not owe her absolution. I did not owe her anything. Nathan and I settled into married life with surprising ease. We bought a small house in the suburbs with a backyard big enough for a garden. I planted roses and tomatoes and herbs, while Nathan built a wooden swing for the porch. On weekends, we hosted dinners for friends, filling our home with laughter and conversation and the smell of good food. I stayed close with Jasmine, who flew out for visits whenever she could. She was godmother to several of her clients' children, now making a difference in the lives of kids who reminded her of me. We talked on the phone every week, picking up conversations as if no time had passed. Nathan's family embraced me fully. Eleanor called me her daughter without qualification. Nathan's father taught me how to use his woodworking tools, and we built a bookshelf together for our living room. His brother sent me memes and invited me to family group chats. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to belong. I thought about my parents and Kristen sometimes, not with anger or longing, but with a kind of detached curiosity. I wondered if they ever talked about me. I wondered if they regretted what they had done. I wondered if Kristen had managed to take a hard look at herself, or if she was still blaming everyone else for her problems. But these thoughts were fleeting. They no longer consumed me. I had made peace with my past by accepting that I could not change it. I could only control my present and my future. The counselor I had seen in college used to talk about forgiveness. She said forgiveness was not about letting people off the hook for what they did. It was about freeing yourself from the weight of carrying anger and resentment. It was about choosing your own peace over their punishment. I forgave my parents in that sense. I no longer wished them ill. I no longer replayed their cruelty in my mind. I released them from the cage I had built in my heart, and in doing so, I released myself. But forgiveness did not mean reconciliation. It did not mean pretending the past had not happened, or welcoming them back into my life. Some doors once closed do not need to be reopened. Some bridges once burned should stay ashes. I learned other lessons, two lessons I carry with